Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. Welcome to the September 6th meeting of the Temple Terrace City Council. I would like to remind everybody, including us, to please silence your electronic devices. And if you would, please stand and join the Vice Mayor while he leads us in the invocation and the pledge.
Heavenly Father, as we gather tonight to manage the affairs of our city, we acknowledge and give thanks to you for all the blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day. We ask for your guidance on this council to do the next right thing. Guide us on the decisions that we make, both large and small, that we will always do what is right and just. We ask for your divine grace on all the employees of the city and for the protection of our first responders who serve to protect our fellow citizens. We ask these blessings in all the many different names as you were known, but in your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before we begin, I would like to extend our condolences. We had a member of our Temple Terrace employee family pass away unexpectedly last week. Mr. Willard Talley was an employee of ours who worked at the Family Rec Center. He leaves behind a wife named Brenda and his adult children, and we'd like to extend our sincere condolences to them. And we'd also like to recognize his friends and coworkers at the rec center as they go through this difficult time too. So. First up, we have a presentation from Kimley Horn. Just for those of you who weren't here, which is all of you, we had a community redevelopment agency meeting at 5:30. Prior to this meeting, the CRA board, which is the same people that are the city council, the CRA board agreed and recommended to move this item forward. So now you will see the presentation that took place a half hour or so ago. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening once again, everyone. In the interest of avoiding deja vu too much, I'm going to just briefly skim through the background, and then I'm going to ask Jared and Corinne from Kimley Horn to come to the podium. They do have a brief presentation. They'll be able to field questions, and then I'll come back to the podium when they're done. First of all, for those that are unfamiliar with the project, it started originally back in March of this year. And it was a project where staff was tasked with considering options for creating a pedestrian-friendly space in the southeast quadrant of the redevelopment area and connecting all of those various projects and merchants together, keeping walkability in mind from as far north as Bullard Parkway all the way down through all the new shops, the new apartments, all the way down past the existing merchants and even further to the south, all the way down to the river. Staff went through a process whereby we reached out to our consultants that we have agreements with and we regularly do business with. And after that process was completed, Kimley Horn was selected as the vendor to take on this project. The project focuses on the connectivity of those various merchants and projects, as well as certain surface improvements to the public grounds that surround the Springdale Outfall Pond. So with that in mind, I would like to invite our representatives from Kimley Horn to the podium, Mr. Jared Snyder and Ms. Corinne Beam. Please.
Welcome.
Hello. So, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here tonight, and we'll get started on our quick presentation. So, as Greg mentioned, our scope of work covers the development of a pedestrian master plan for the southeast quadrant of the redevelopment area. And just as a brief overview of the area, it's generally located in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Bullard Parkway and 56th Street, in that area, in that red box there. So, and Greg briefly highlighted some of these project goals, but the idea is to develop pedestrian concepts that will improve pedestrian flow and connectivity through the site from Bullard Parkway all the way down to the Hillsborough River. Also enhancing walkability. A second component of the scope of work is to develop concepts for park improvements and amenities around the Springdale Park area, and also connect those amenities and that space to the development. And all this is important to create a visual representation and guidance as the site continues to develop, and to ensure the vision for the site is met as it continues to evolve. So at a high level, our scope of work includes 3 tasks. The first task is mainly project meetings and coordinating with staff, so we've identified up to 6 coordination meetings, 3 in person, 3 virtual, as well as a kickoff meeting with staff and other representatives from the city, and a field review at the site. Task 2 is where we really get into the meat of the scope of work, where we will begin developing 3 alternatives for some of the pedestrian connectivity options, and then 2 alternatives for the pond improvements. During this time, we'll be coordinating with staff and working with staff to develop concepts that are feasible, meet the vision of the area, as well as review the concepts for implementation procedures and funding opportunities such as grants and other opportunities that may be out there following the development of the vision and implementing it at a later time. And then once we come up with a draft concept packet, we'll be bringing that back to you all for your review and comment before we finalize. Anything else? So our anticipated project schedule, once we get kicked off, is roughly 15 to 16 weeks. Again, most of that time spent working with staff in the city to develop those draft concepts. And then I would like to open it up for any questions.
Council member questions? I have, I have one, and I'm not sure really who to direct it to. Maybe there's a little discussion to be had here. So we have some of this project, some of your deliverable is more time sensitive than others, because certain parcels are on the market currently for sale. And some of them are going to require us to hold back portions of this property in order to put something in there. That doesn't affect the whole project, it just affects some. And so is there a way to get something to us sooner than 16 weeks for a placeholder? I know the design's not going to be finished or selected by us, but we ought to have some idea that we need to clip the corner of parcel A, or, you know, to hold back 50 feet or 40 feet or something to, you know, make sure that we have enough room to put whatever it is in there. And we have some idea of where some of this needs to go. The park, the Springdale Park, you can take all the time is necessary with that. And crossing Winn-Dixie, that's already built out, so there's no time. But you understand what I'm saying? I'm concerned we're gonna get somebody who wants to buy the property, and we don't know what to hold back.
Mr. Mayor, if you would allow me to respond to the first part of that, then I'll let Corinne or Jared follow up. One thing I would like all of you to understand is that our brokers have already met with these folks, and they are very much involved in these discussions moving forward. And our brokers are constantly engaging potential buyers and trying to sift through what are some of the more appealing options. So with that in mind, some of those ideas, at least at the surface level, have already been put into play. Now, as far as trying to bring you something prior to the project end, anything that, and I'm going to defer to these two in just a moment, but anything that they are comfortable after meeting with staff, because as you saw, there's several meetings that's going to take place. There's also meetings with local business owners that's going to take place, other stakeholders in that community. Those meetings are all going to take place. And from those discussions, there's going to be additional ideas brought forward that's going to help the Kimley Horn team develop a deeper level into their project. Now, with that said, I'm certainly willing to bring forward whatever we're able to bring in. Obviously, until the project is termed out, it's going to be a tentative approach. But if it brings a certain level of comfort to the whole process moving forward, because I think we're all aware, this is a huge project moving forward, and it's not just about the improving the connectivity with the sidewalks and the trails in the park. It's about the entire area and building up the entire area to be a cohesive downtown redevelopment area. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and step away and let them finish up. But I'm certainly willing to bring forward as much as we can, even in interim temporary steps, if you will, if that will help moving forward.
Well, you kind of, you answered in a good way. That gives me a little comfort already, so you may not even need to elaborate further. But I'm glad to hear that our broker is already a partner in this, because it may not even be a problem. But if somebody comes forward and says, hey, I want to build a, a whatever there, having the broker know that this is underway and the potential buyer know that this is underway, because they may have some ideas that contribute to the project too. So I'm not necessarily looking for you to, okay, 30 days out, we want to know exactly. That's not what I'm looking for. You've already kind of given me what I'm hoping to get. So is that, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We know what you're talking to prospective buyers, but who's talking to Winn-Dixie?
Also our broker. Our broker has been in contact with the property owner, and actually the property owner, I'm going to be careful what I say because I'm speaking at a public meeting, and a lot of those discussions, I don't think he's comfortable making public at this point. Just know that the property owner is very much willing to have conversations with us, and he is expecting to hopefully in the near future see something from their team that will help him and help guide him moving forward. So to answer your question, absolutely yes, he's been included.
I mean, unfortunately, he's the only one who can be named, because the other guys, we don't know who the new owners are. So, thank you.
So now, we have to wait until item C, 8C, to approve the expenditure. I was gonna say, we made them sit through one meeting and then they come up, and now we're gonna make them sit until we get to 8C. Is there any problem if the council wants to move 8C forward? Is that okay with everybody if we move 8C forward?
You need a motion?
Okay, well, I don't think we do to move it forward, but let's go to 8C then. This is a resolution approving the expenditure of $69,624 to Kimley Horn to create a pedestrian master plan for the redevelopment area. That's what we just talked about, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you following along. And Business Relations Manager Greg Polly is here for a brief explanation.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is the funding for the project that we just mentioned. This, the recommendation from staff is that council consider this an expenditure from our CRA, Taxable Increment Financing Fund, our TIF fund, and that staff would recommend that you approve it coming out of the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. It's tentatively already installed in the budget as a line item at a estimate that's slightly lesser than the full price. The estimate that was placed into the tentative budget is $65,000, and the final quote is $69,624. I've spoken to our interim finance director, and he's aware of the small discrepancy, And there will simply be an offsetting exchange of the $4,624 that will go towards the expenditure, and it would be a little less going from the internal transfer.
So you said 22-23 budget. Did, that's,
Starting October 1.
okay. Vice Mayor?
What will be the deliverables at this, for this fund, for this phase, this stage,
Do you want to speak to that?
that we can expect?
Sure, Jared Schneider with Kinley Horn. So the deliverables, what you'd have is a package showing different concept options. So think of,
We'll have it'll be an optional package with different recommendations.
that's right,
And
correct.
how depth or how much detail will that be?
So you'll have drawings at the conceptual level, will not be to the design level, but very close to conceptual level with renderings and then potential costs as well, planning
So
level.
there will be cost projections associated with it,
Correct.
under the different possibilities. Okay, good, thank you.
Council members, other questions? Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Ms. D'Angelo?
I just have a question.
You have to approach the podium, please. State your name and
Gina
city.
D'Angelo, 6705 Peachtree Drive. My question is, it's talking about pedestrians. Is there any thought about bicycles as well?
Yes.
So, that's the question.
And the answer is yes.
Oh, okay.
Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this? More council member questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the resolution for the expenditure of $69,624 to Kimley Horn to create a pedestrian master plan for the redevelopment area in the 22-23 budget.
Second.
Motion and a second. A discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. The resolution is adopted. Thank you for being here tonight. You're welcome to stay, but I don't think anybody really expects that you want to.
Waiting to see if we approve that budget.
Well, I guess there is that.
Running.
Next item are board appointments. There are 3 regular member appointments to the School Support Committee. There are 3 vacancies, and 6 residents applied for terms extending from September 6th, 2022 until September 6th, 2025. The applicants are Gina D'Angelo, Adnan Masood, Richard Paz, Jen Wells, Alyssa Hines, and Christina Paul. I do know that some of them are here, so I'm just going to go down the list in alphabetical order. If you would like to come and say a few words, you are welcome. We're not going to set the timer unless we need to, but, so we'll just go in order. You don't have to, but you're welcome. Ms. D'Angelo, I know you're here. If you'd like to say a few comments?
Again, I don't have, do I have to say my name again?
Yes.
Gina D'Angelo, 6705 Peachtree Drive. Mr. Mayor, council members, public education, as we all know, is one of our most important responsibilities as a city, nation, whatever. I've got over 10 years' experience training adults, and I believe that I can use that experience to bring new ideas to help improve our school ratings, which we all know need improvement for the most part. I know River Hills Elementary has recently increased their rating. I don't know what they did to do that, but I'd like to learn more about that process and see how we can duplicate it with the other schools. And I would, it's just a really important, and public schools are the backbone of our society, and they're very important that we get, increase our ratings so that we can bring also more revenue to the city.
Thank you, Ms. D'Angelo. Alyssa Hines. Welcome, Ms. Hines.
My name's Alyssa. I'll be quick here. I'm a mom of 2 young children, and my husband's a Temple Terrace native. I want to be a part of this committee in hopes of making a difference, not just in our Temple Terrace schools, but in our community as well, helping improving our community. Our children attend these schools 7, 8, sometimes more hours a day, and the students, teachers, and admins and parents all need support to make this time best for everyone. I'm a firm believer in the phrase, "It takes a village," to raise a child, and I believe in protecting the children's innocence, educating with purpose, and building their confidence in themselves and their futures. So in order to do that, we need to support everyone around those children in order to really reach those goals. For me, I just want to be a part of that support for our community and our schools. Our schools host the most important jobs in the city, in my opinion, helping raise our children, and I want to do what I can to help support those educators.
Thank you, ma'am.
Adnan,
Masood? Okay. Christina Paul?
You're here. She's here.
You're going to pass. That's fine. Richard Paz? Welcome, sir. Good evening.
Hello. Do I have to say my name and everything as well?
Yes, sir.
All right. Richard Paz, 123 Glen Ridge Avenue. My name is Richard Paz. I'm here primarily from Pizzo originally. That's the school that I come from. Public education has been very important to me throughout my life. I'm a product of public education, K to 12, all the way up to going to University of Florida as well. So I think it's something that's a solid, as someone said, backbone of our society, and I think it's very important that we try to represent as much as we can the public education system. And I'm happy to work with all of you. I'm looking forward to working with the local government and see what we can do to help the school systems in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Paz. And Jen Wells. Good evening.
Hello, everybody. So for the record, I am Jen Wells, Queensway Drive. I just wanted to say, as somebody who's been on the support committee for 6.5 years now and chairperson for the last few, I'm also a teacher, and I really appreciate how many people have applied for this position on the committee. It's probably the most that we've had in a while. So, thank you for being a part. I'm a lifelong Temple Terrace resident. Like I said, I'm a teacher, and it is so important that we do support our schools. I, of course, have applied to continue on. This will be my third and final term for now. So if you'll have me, I'm happy to continue with what we've been doing and keep our motion going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. So council members, we have ballots in front of us. If you would please check 3 names and pass them down to the city clerk. Don't forget to circle your name on the bottom, too. Keep the second ballot. We've learned that we have runoff elections here some nights.
Except for the city manager, that was.
That was unanimous. Here we have that silence again while we all stare at each other. Actually, we're all watching the clerk try to add this up.
So the top 3 highest candidates were Christina Paul, Richard Paz, and Jennifer Wells.
Very good, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the appointments?
I move to approve the appointment as indicated by our votes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The appointments are confirmed. I would like to take a moment to thank the other 3 applicants. It's always a difficult job when you have people who are willing to serve the community, but you only have 3 spots or 2 spots, and so please don't be discouraged by this. We are glad to put everybody to work. One of the things that makes Temple Terrace wonderful is our citizen involvement. So we appreciate everybody who steps forward. Has everybody had an opportunity? Well, we have several rounds of minutes to approve. So let's start with the August 16th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those?
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Those minutes are approved. Next is the August 18th, 2022 Special City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those?
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Those minutes are approved. And the final one is the approval of the August 22nd, 2022 Special City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and, who was it over here? I think she beat you to it. Councilmember Abel second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Those minutes are approved. Next item are persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. We do have a 3-minute time limit imposed on all public comment. We do ask that speakers come to the podium, state your name and city of residence. I currently have no written requests to speak. There are forms in the back of the room. Is there anybody who wishes to address the council? Okay, we'll move on. Next item is the first public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 1535, approving the fiscal year 22-23 tax levy. I'll open the public hearing, and Interim Finance Director Jim Ingram will explain. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Ross, City Council. Following the receipt of public comment on September 6, 2022, staff will recommend that the City Council should approve the attached ordinance approving the ad valorem tax rate for the fiscal year 2022-2023. If approved on first reading, the ordinance will be scheduled for second and final reading on September 20th, 2022. In accordance with the applicable provisions of the city charter and the Florida statutes, the City Council has scheduled the first of 2 public hearings on the property tax millage levy. The first hearing is scheduled for September 6, 2022, to solicit public comments on the proposed property tax millage levy prior to the adoption of the annual budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. The agenda has been structured to provide the council with the opportunity to comply with both city charter and Florida statutory requirements on the budget and tax levy. The council needs to convene a public hearing on the proposed property tax millage levy and make announcements at the public hearing prior to formal consideration of the formal resolution. The recommended property tax millage rate is 6.455 per $1,000 of assessed value, a decrease of 0.1 mil from the current fiscal year millage rate of 6.555. The recommended property tax millage rate of 6.455 is 0.6872 mils, or 11.91% higher than the rolled back rate of 5.7678. Subsequent to the adoption of the resolution, the council should take action to approve the attached ordinance approving the ad valorem tax rate for the upcoming fiscal year. If approved on first reading, the ordinance will be scheduled for second and final reading on September 20th, 2022. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, council member questions for Mr. Ingram? No. Any questions? If there are none, I will close the public hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, adopting a millage rate of 6.455 mils for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, said millage rate being .6872 mils or 11.9% more than the rollback rate of 5.7678 mils, providing a severability clause and providing an effective date.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1535?
I move to,
Ordinance 1535 adopting the fiscal year 2022, 2023 tax levy on first public hearing and first reading.
second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye,
opposed?
aye, but don't we need a roll call? Didn't we do roll call vote on this?
I don't think on this one.
Okay, all right, aye.
Yeah, only on the final.
On the final, okay, I knew there was one.
Any opposed? No nays. Motion is adopted. Ordinance 1535 is adopted on first reading, will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, September 20th. Thank you. So this item, we do need a roll call vote, City Attorney. Item B.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Next item is first public hearing and first reading of ordinance 1536, approving the fiscal year 22-23 annual budget. I will open the public hearing, and Interim Finance Director Jim Ingram is still here and will continue to explain.
Thank you. Staff recommends that the City Council solicit public comment on the proposed FY 2022-2023 annual budget and approve the attached ordinance on first reading approving the proposed budget. If approved on first reading, the ordinance will be scheduled for final reading on September 20th, 2022. In accordance with the applicable provisions of the city charter and the Florida statutes, the first of two public hearings has been scheduled for Tuesday, September 6th at 6 p.m. to solicit public comment on the annual budget for the upcoming 2022-2023 fiscal year. Notification of the public hearing was initially provided to all property owners in the Truth in Millage, TRIM, notices provided by the Property Appraiser's Office in mid-August. The recommended budget was presented to the City Council in a series of budget workshops to review and solicit adjustments to the allocations of the budget documents. The total city fiscal year 2022-2023 budget amounts to $93,400,136. A budget summary document is attached illustrating the total budget for the upcoming fiscal year. The proposed 2022-23 budget reflects the following. First, more ad valorem tax revenue to the general fund, which will help with increased cost due to growth and inflation. A decrease of 0.1 mil in the ad valorem tax rate to 6.455 mils from the current year of 6.555. A 10% increase in commercial sanitation rates beginning January 1st, 2023. A 10% increase in single-family residential sanitation rates beginning January 1st, 2023. 5% increase in water, sewer, and irrigation rates beginning January 1st, 2023. $429,417 in general fund capital programs. $1,618,350 in community investment tax fund expenditures to include replacing public safety vehicles and equipment, building improvements for Fire Station 2, window replacement at the public library, and community parks and recreation facility improvements. $6,784,500 in needed utility system improvements, replacements, and vehicle replacements in the capital fund. $7 million in utility services hardened water facility funded through revenue received through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA as it is known. An additional $2,180,000 of ARPA-funded stormwater projects. $1,515,000 in non-ARPA-funded street improvement projects. $220,000 to purchase a sanitation truck. This is for special pickup and containers. $5.4 million anticipated revenue for the Rollerson Ranch property sale, with $1,252,333 of the revenue being used to pay off the Republic loan debt principal related to the CRA. Another $1.5 million designated for a police building reserve fund, and the remaining balance designated as to be determined reserves. In addition, apart from the Rollerson Ranch revenue, we have $500,000 total reserved to apply during the year for medical insurance increases and salary study with related compression issues. We have $715,449 of general fund reserve for contingency. A 5% salary increase for general employees, and increases in funding for gasoline and other operational supplies. In accordance with the applicable provisions of the city charter and the Florida statutes, the City Council has scheduled the first of two public hearings on the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual budget. After the City Council solicits public comment on the proposed annual budget, the Council should approve the attached ordinance adopting the proposed budget. The second hearing and final reading of the ordinance will be held on September 20th, 2022. And I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Well done.
City manager.
Are there, yes,
We have
Dr.
a
Skinner.
PowerPoint to show just relating to some of the utility increases. Would you like to do that?
Let's do that before we ask for public comment then, sure. Who's going to do that?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, as part of the budget that you've approved in the enterprise fund, staff recommend an increase of 5% in utility rates for fiscal year '23. Prior to last year's increase of 3.4%, utility rates had not been increased in the city since fiscal year 2014, when they were increased 4.4% in water sewer and 4.1% in irrigation. The average Temple Terrace household will see an approximate $5 increase in their monthly water and sewer bill. Rates will not increase until January 1st,
Dr.
2023.
Spina, is it 5% or 10?
5. Utility is 5, sanitation is 10.
Sanitation is 10,
Okay,
water, utilities, and 5%.
okay, thank you.
The city of Temple Terrace pumps its wastewater to the city of Tampa. Tampa rates have increased 3% a year since 2020. This rate will be charged 3% a year until 2031, and then 4% a year from 2032 to 2040. Temple Terrace spent approximately $4.7 million in fiscal 22 for wastewater disposal fees to the city of Tampa. And part of this increase is to keep our balances steady, basically, or funded. The city of Temple Terrace strives to keep its fund balance to operating and depreciation expense at 25%. These rate increases enable the city to maintain a ratio of 22% to 25% over the next 3 years. Sanitation rates, the city staff is proposing a rate, well, the city of Temple Terrace's staff is proposing a rate increase in solid waste over 10% for fiscal year '23. The city of Temple Terrace disposes of its solid waste through Hillsborough County. Solid waste disposal rates per ton have increased from $58 per ton in 2017 to $81.35 in fiscal year '23. This is an increase of 40% over the last 5 years. The increase from Hillsborough County for this year was 15%. And as I said, we're recommending an increase of 10%. The average consumer will see an increase in their solid waste costs ranging from $2.80 to $3 per household based on the recommended increase. I'd just like to remind you, too, that rates for senior citizens 65 years and older are being held steady at $18 per month. Rates will not increase until January 1st, and the increase is needed to meet the city's fund balance, operating, and depreciation expense of 25%. This increase will provide a ratio of 10% to 25% over the next 3 years. And then we've provided you with an indication of the consumer price index over the last 10 or 12 years, showing that in water and sewer maintenance and water and sewer rates, the rates have increased 26% since 2010, and in maintenance increased 57% since 2010. So if we have any questions.
Very good, thank you, Dr. Spina. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Mr. Friedman, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Bob Friedman, 508 Montrose Avenue. Appreciate how comprehensive this report was. I heard that there will be salary increases for employees, and I appreciate that. I didn't hear whether, I may have missed it, whether there will be additional employees added to the city, and if so, in what capacity?
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Council member questions? I do have one, since we only had one public comment. Mr. Ingram, do you mind answering that? Because
We have in the general fund 11 new FTEs, mostly, to be honest, to handle the growth in the city. There's 4 in police, 2 in fire. Some of these positions won't start till mid-year. We do have in general fund, we have 1 in finance, half a person at the library, half FTE, 1 in public works facility, half an FTE in the executive marketing branch, and 2 in community development, where we also have increased needs to handle the amount of work coming through. In the enterprise funds, which does not take any of the ad valorem tax money, we do have an increase of 4 in the water and sewer utilities department, 1 in the sanitation, and 1 for customer service, the utility billing customer service office. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. I'll ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance, please.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, adopting the final operating budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023, and the capital improvement budget, giving notice of the public hearings thereon, authorizing the city manager to issue such instructions as are necessary to achieve and accomplish the service programs, authorizing the city manager or the finance director to transfer monies among the departments and programs within any fund, authorizing the city manager or the finance director upon receipt of a donation or grant to appropriate said funds in the expenditure line item of the program as requested by the donor grantor, providing a severability clause, effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1536?
I move to approve Ordinance 1536, approving the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual budget upon first reading.
I second that.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? If you'll indulge me for just one moment, this isn't really discussion on the motion as it is. I just want to add to the presentation. Dr. Spinamay, thank you. Very well done. Thank you, Mr. Ingram. For those of you who are watching, assuming that there is somebody watching, this council does not take raising anything lightly, even if it's only a few dollars. If we raise water, garbage pickup, I can tell you that we've had extensive debate about this and sharpened our pencils and tried to figure this out to have the minimum impact on everybody. But there's some factors in this, as Dr. Spina said, that we can't control, right? We have to pay to dispose of the garbage that we pick up. And many of you know that all of our garbage, all our household garbage that we pick up in Temple Terrace goes to the incinerator. So as long as the incinerator doesn't break down, none of our garbage winds up in the landfill. So that is one thing. So the question is then, well, could we save money by going to the landfill? Because it costs more to dump at the incinerator, and it does. But it would cost us more money to drive the trucks further to get to the landfill by the time we pay for the fuel and the time for our employees to be out of service while they're driving further to get to the landfill. So we choose to go to the incinerator because it's more ecologically responsible, and it's also more fiscally responsible because of where we're located. We can't control the rates that the county's charging at the incinerator, and as you've seen, those rates have gone up exponentially. The same is true with water. All of our wastewater is piped to the city of Tampa, and we pay them to treat our sewage. That's where it all goes, and they set the rates for what they charge for that treatment. So what we have done is passed these hard costs down to the consumer because we don't have any money other than your money, right? And so I also want to point out that many cities have chosen to avoid this whole public thing every year by adding an automatic escalator based on the consumer price index. This council has chosen not to do that, even though we have to have this public meeting every year. We've chosen not to do that because there are sometimes when across the country the CPI is higher than the increase that we've experienced here in the Tampa Bay area. And we don't want to pass any unnecessary expense to the public. So when we make a rate increase, it's only the cost of the services. We are not making any profit or money on picking up garbage or treating wastewater. All we are doing is passing those hard costs out to the taxpayer, and that's the only place we can. So it's unpleasant, but I want people to understand this council is not fleecing you. We take this very seriously, which is why we lowered the millage rate when we had the opportunity to do that. So we're well aware that this is a bad time to raise rates on anything. But we're doing the best we can to try to contain that. So, sorry about that. There's a little more comment than on a motion, but I wanted to, yes, Vice
Can I
Mayor.
make a comment about
Sure.
that? I'd like to make a comment about the entire process. It's been an extraordinary year with a lot of things going on, and I just want to thank the Finance Department and all the staff, all up and down the entire line, from the lowest employee all the way up to all the directors. This has been a very unique budget where everybody's had input and everybody's had say commentary. And I know I've been involved with the budget process for the last 6 years. And this is the most dynamic budget we put together. I mean, everybody had input, and I just want to thank everybody. I'm sure that everybody up here agrees that made it a lot easier, a lot better. It's a lot more transparent, and everybody knows where everything is. So I just want to say thank you to all the staff, and all the directors, and everybody involved with it, because it was a good process. Thank you.
Other comments on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you very much. So we have motion, discussion, we need a roll call vote. We'll start down here with.
Aye.
Counselor, aye.
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 Good.
Yay, yay, yay.
Ordinance 1536 is adopted on first reading and will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, September 20th. Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving SPR 2203, which is a site plan review application for the development of the western portion of folio 038204-0005. Senior Planner Gus Carpus is here to explain.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So what you have before you is a site plan review application, essentially for the western 4.45 acres of the VA medical site. If you recall, they came before us with 19 acres. What we ended up doing was approving the eastern portion to allow the development of the hospital, while they figured out the drainage and some of the other stuff on the western side. So what they've come now with this 4.45 acres. And so on this part of the phase here, they're looking to create a developable out parcel, which would be platted later. And then with the site plan, with a new owner, they would also be looking, and the site plan will show this as we go along, to create a drive access from Temple Terrace Highway along the west property line to the property directly to the south. It finalizes the internal circulation on the site and finishes the drainage ponds that serves the entire area. So again, this is showing the western portion. Now, when we first looked at the site, it came to us in July of 2021 as an annexation of the entire 39 acres or something to that effect, 49.5 acres. And then in August, we did a comprehensive plan amendment. And then in December of 2021, we did a rezoning. And then in November of 2021, we approved the hospital, essentially phase 1. So again, there's the site, and this is the map I had shown originally with the first site showing the uses around there. So that highlighted area there is the area on the west side there, those two six, the 1/3 of the map there is the area that's being changed. So the out parcel is in that area that says Site Geometry Plan Area 1. So that's where the out parcel will be platted at a future date, but that's the area in which it's going to be. Now the road running along the west property line from Temple Terrace Highway to the adjacent property line to the south, that's going to gain access there. Now, if I recall, that was a request by the county. I will double check that the applicant is here. And then, as you can see, the internal roads then are finalized for the internal circulation of the site for the entire 19 acres, including the hospital. And the configuration and the drainage and everything, this has all been approved by Swift Mud. And the DRC, Brian, everybody took a look at this, and they are fine with that. You look like you have a question, right? Oh, right off the bat, okay. So when the staff looked at this, the DRC looked at it, and so we did feel that this did meet our requirements, and we did recommend approval for the development and the approval of the second phase for the development of the 4.45 acres, creating that additional access, the additional parcel, the internal circulation into drainage. And that is about what I have. The applicant is here, but I'm sure someone has a question.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to make a presentation? No? Okay. Okay. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Okay, Vice Mayor.
Yes, in the overall plan, this is probably not appropriate for this phase, but in your overall deliberations, has there been any thought about accommodating a HART bus stop in there for future transportation for the employees of the VA? I know that HART is planning on accommodating that eventually, if once it's built and everything, but they're going to need a way to actually service the area. Is there any thought process of putting that in play? I know you're not at that stage yet, but we keep that in the back of your mind as you go forward. That, but much like what we did with Amazon, they actually made an area that they could do it. Just if there's a way to accommodate that going forward, because I'm sure that with the number of employees going to be working there, that public transportation might become an issue for them in the future.
Councilman Schisler, Zach Rose, on-site project manager for Colony Property. So I've been in contact with Hart on and off right now. We had initial discussions about how to accommodate the bus stop that is, let me orient myself here, about 500 feet west of us to come closer for the veterans. One of the big things that we push for on our VAs is obviously the facility is there to serve veterans, but some veterans are disabled, and so we like to have the bus stop as close as possible. So it's still in the works right now. We're having dialogue and conversations with them and engaging the VA to have input on that as well. But
just want to make sure it's at everybody's horizon. That's all. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions, council members? Councilmember down here.
For the first time, I heard the words new owners.
So the plan always included an out parcel, which would be sold to somebody. So whoever purchases that portion of property would plat it and then present a site plan to the council. So that would be the intent of the current owners, would be to sell that parcel to somebody, and they would approach the city with the plat and a site plan.
So the reason I asked that is that when we first heard about the plan, our first question, or one of our first questions was, is this a taxable property? So I guess that would be my next question about, as it moves forward, how...
It was always presented that this was a taxable site, but it was always gonna have that second out parcel that was gonna go to a retail use or some other use that would be developed by somebody else, because the VA didn't need all that area. But it was gonna be sold to another for-profit type business that would come in and plat it and sell it. And I don't know if you're...
What?
Came all this way, may as well say something. Mike Owens with Cullinan Properties. It'll be an end user, and the end user may rent from us or they may buy from us. But either way, it's the intention that the millage rates that you just passed earlier today would apply to the entire 19 and a half acres.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, council members? I have a couple. Gus, could you put the slide back up, the second to the last one, I think it was? Yeah, that one. I had trouble pulling this up on my screen tonight for some reason. So site geometry plan area A, that's the part that we're talking about tonight, correct?
Yes, the.
Area
shaded-
1.
The shaded area, Area 1 and Area 4.
Oh, okay, that was one of my questions. We're
Both
talking
of
about
those
both of those, okay.
Correct.
So I saw something in here about retention pond and swift mud approval and stuff. Where's the pond on there?
So they have them labeled. I have to take a look. So you have, so you have what it says out parcel. And then on the west, those two west rectangles right alongside the road, that's Swift Mud 1, Swift Mud 2. So those are the drainage areas.
Okay. So those two, those aren't potential buildings?
Those
are
aren't
ponds.
parcels, no, those are the drainage areas.
Okay, all right. That answers my question. So a potential new buyer then would be bound by the approval of this site plan that we're doing tonight?
Correct.
So all the internal circulation issues, we would have that nailed down? So they can't come in and want to change the site plan and make, something else?
Correct, without trying to amend the whole site plan itself.
Right. I don't know why they would want to do that. So this is good. This is, okay, all right, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Other questions, council members? Yes, Councilmember Chambers.
On the out parcel, I assume that when that gets developed, that parking and all that will be included in the out parcel.
Correct, because they still have to come in with a site plan that needs to be approved. So we'll be seeing this again at least twice with the plat and the site plan.
Okay, and the new entry and exit road on the west side, you said the county requested that?
I believe that was what I was told by the engineer, is that the county wanted access to the property to the south.
Okay, but that entrance will have to be approved by the county because it's.
Correct, the county has approved that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, council members? Okay, is there a motion to approve SPR 22-03?
I move to approve resolution approving SPR 22-03, a site plan review application for the development of the western portion of folio 038204-0005.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Keep digging.
Thank you. Next item is a resolution approving an addendum to the concessionaire agreement with Project Focus for the operation of the Focus Cafe. Leisure Services Director Carl Langfeld is here to explain.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Back in 2019, the city entered into an agreement with Project Focus to operate the Focus Cafe in the family complex. That agreement was for a 2-year term with 4 one-year extensions. However, the agreement did not make those 4-year extensions automatic. What I'm coming you to request tonight is to authorize the city manager to execute an addendum to the original agreement to, first of all, to validate those years of the extensions that have already happened, and then to allow for automatic renewals of the following 1-year terms to the agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Langfeld. Other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? None. Council member questions. Councilmember Abel.
So I noticed in the backup materials that it said something about the number of hours that the Focus Cafe would be open.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was wondering, are those regular hours posted anywhere?
The regular hours are not posted. When the original agreement was drafted pre-COVID, and COVID messed their whole world up for a lot of reasons, along with all of the other schools. But it particularly affected the students at Focus because a lot of those kids have immune deficiencies and complications that prevented some of the normal, what we expected the cafe to operate. It drastically changed that. As we're getting into this school year, things are returning to normalcy at the school, at the cafe, at the family complex that will allow for the expansion of those hours. And what you're going to see in the next item that we're going to talk about will further smooth out that transition and smooth out the hours of operation that will allow the cafe to operate in the family complex.
Okay, thank you.
Council members, other questions? Very good. Is there a motion to approve resolution?
Move to approve the addendum to concession air agreement with the Project Focus for the operation of the Focus Cafe.
Second.
I'm going to give it to Councilmember Chambers this time. Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Resolution is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Langfeld. Next item is a resolution related, approving an agreement with Focus Academy for student work experience programs. Mr. Langfeld?
Thank you. Good evening. Members of City Council, Carl Langfeld, Leisure Services Director. For several years now, students from Focus Academy provide services to the city. They call it community-based training. And what community-based training is an opportunity for students at Focus Academy to go out into the community, whether it's at a city facility. I believe they do work at Five Star Pizza, they go to Publix, and they do light custodial work. They do filing work for us. They do paper shredding. They wash windows and gymnastics mats. They clean fitness equipment. And it gets them out into the community and into real world job experience training. When this program was initiated several years ago, there was never any type of formal agreement or formal contract between the city and the school to permit those students to come into the schools or to come into the city facilities and perform these work experience programs. So what I'm bringing forward tonight is to formalize the agreement, to formalize the understanding between the city and the school about which each other's roles and responsibilities are. And it also slightly expands the opportunities between the school and the city by permitting the students to use some classroom space that we have at the family complex during the week, during the day, between the time in the morning where they're doing the community-based training and they're doing work around the family complex, around Lightfoot, around the library, and the time where they open up the cafe around lunchtime, to do job training, to teach the students about what it means to go to work, to what it means to clock in and clock out, and managing time and managing relationships with other people that they work with supervisors, with coworkers. And what it does is it puts the students in an environment like they would be going to if they were going to work, where they will come to the family complex in the morning or go to the library or go to Lightfoot Center or wherever else they may be doing training, and they're there for the day. It takes them out of their comfort zone at the school, out of that environment where they're so used to being, and puts them in an environment like they're going to work. And it provides them that training. And it's an extremely valuable program for the students at the school. And we also, as the city, get some valuable work out of the students where they're able to provide some services to the facilities that they work at. So this agreement, the resolution is to authorize the city manager to execute this agreement to allow for the work experience programs to take place in city facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Langfeld. Other members of the public who wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council member questions.
Don't have a question, but I will have a comment.
Okay, questions? Council member questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve? I'll get back to you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve the resolution approving the agreement with Focus Academy for the student work experience.
Second.
Motion and a second. Councilmember Donahue.
I just want to say that the learning experience at the Focus Cafe happens on both sides of the counter, because I've had my grandchildren there who have, you could tell that they recognized that there was learning going on the other side of the counter by the worker, and understood that they had to be patient. That does not normally happen with kids, okay? So the idea, we think that this is only about the kids at Focus Academy, it reaches way beyond that, because I've seen a new level of respect. And, all the kids at the camp, the summer camp this year, and, there were kids in and out buying, by the way, the best deal on a hot dog you're gonna get for miles around. And so this is such a bonus for our community, not just for those children at the school, but for all the kids, and I'm sure grown-ups too, who are the customers. So I applaud you for making this cafe what it is, and allowing them to do that, and for the city manager to allowing them to work all around our city building. So kudos to everybody involved.
Discussion on the motion. Vice Mayor?
I just want to say thank you. It's a big undertaking for you and your staff, and there's challenges that come along with it. So thank you to your staff for stepping up and being able to provide a very good service to the schools. Thank you.
Other discussion? I just want to add to that, Mr. Langfeld, I go in there almost every day, and you run a great show. You and your staff do a terrific job at the rec center, period. But this is like the crown jewel of what you do there. I mean, I see these Focus students there. I see them working behind the counter. Your staff members have embraced this. The residents who go to the rec center have embraced it. They love it. The students love it. This is just a win-win for everybody. So thank you for taking the lead on this. I know, between the cafe and now the work program, this is just a great example of one of the things that we do, and should look for ways to do more things like this. So thank you very much for that. Further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Who could be opposed to this, right? No nays. The resolution is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Langfield.
It's one more reason we're amazing.
That's right. There you go. Next item is a resolution approving CPH LLC to complete the design criteria package for the newly proposed Whiteway Utility Service Center. That sounds fancy. Utility Service Center.
It is going to be fancy.
Public Works Utilities Director, well, I guess this is one of the last time. Public Works Utilities Director Troy Tinch will explain.
Good evening, Your Honorable Mayor, City Council, Troy Tinch, Public Works, for the last time, hopefully. Utilities Director. I'll have a name change. That'll be simply it. I'm not leaving.
I was thinking, wait, stop the presses. Don't say that.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, good.
Anyway, I'm here this evening to seek approval for funding of a design criteria package, which will be utilized in the bidding of the proposed Whiteway Utility Service Center for that construction activity. As you recall, earlier this year, I brought forward the prioritization report for the American Rescue Plan Act. And in that plan itself, I identified this project where we would be building a new hardened facility to take place of the existing unhardened facility that's been around since the early 60s. So what this facility would, in essence, do is provide a safe haven for staff, pre and post event. It will also aid us in the ability to go out after we have a storm event and restore the city's utility system. So I think it's highly needed. There's a great opportunity here for us to utilize the funding that was put forth under ARPA for this effort. So very excited about that. So when we were going through the process, I was discussing the time frames that we had to have a contractor on board, approved by you, the sitting council, for the construction of this project by the end of 2024. That's not as far away as we all realize. It's just right around the corner. So, and in essence, to kind of streamline that effort and speed this process along, we looked at some alternatives to your traditional bid build process, design bid build. What we thought would be the best thing for us is the design build process. So this differs slightly. What it allows us to do is we create this design criteria package, which I'm requesting today, which in essence is a conceptual design of what we're looking to build. about a 35% design of that particular facility. We then take that design criteria package, we bid that out, and a contractor couples with a design team. They work in concert with one another to complete the design process. While they're going through that design process, since the contractor is more or less married to that design team, they're working together. They're working to look for options to save us money. And they're through maybe different types of construction processes. In addition, it's giving the contractor an extended amount of time to order materials that we're seeing that need those long lead times. Materials like generators, like steel. So it gives them that extended period of time so that we can meet that ultimate date of having this completed by the end of 2026, which again, sounds like a long way off, but when you start these construction projects, they can drag a bit. So that said, staff recommends the City Council adopt a resolution approving the expenditure of $179,210.58 for CPH to complete the design criteria package for the design build of the Whiteway Utility Service Center. The proposed work will be authorized as a task work order under the existing General Professional Services Agreement between the city and CPH. I will stand for questions, if any.
Thank you, Mr. Tinch. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, council members, questions? Any questions? Vice Mayor?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The funding for this is a specific line item in the ARPA,
Yeah, it's all under the confines of construction.
Okay.
It's just a solid $7 million that we've put towards that effort.
Okay, but this is part of that.
Yes, it is.
Okay, second question, then, what kind of time frame are we looking at for this completion of this phase?
I would anticipate this probably taking 8 to 10 months. And then you're looking at probably a couple month window, maybe 3 or 4 months of that bidding process. And then we'll select the contractor based on low bid and then move forward with that.
About when?
Hopefully by the end of 2024. Well, we definitely have to have it by the end of 2024.
2024 or 2023?
24. Oh, so we'll have it, I'm sorry. We hope to have it done by the end of 2023. So then that will give us 3 additional years to go through the entire construction process.
Okay, so we're talking calendar years or fiscal years?
Calendar years.
Okay, so you're talking 15 months to where we're actually turning dirt.
That is our fondest hope. Yes. That is the intent of what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, council members? Good. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I move to approve the resolution, CPH LLC, to complete the design criteria package for the newly proposed Whiteway Utility Service Center.
Second.
Motion and a second.
It was him.
Discussion on the motion? No discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Resolution is adopted.
Thank you. And might I add that it's not going to be fancy, it's going to be functional.
Oh, okay.
It's a matter of opinion.
Uh-huh. Well, for the people that are working in that current building, it's gonna be fancy.
We've been in that
If
building.
you've been in that building. Next is a resolution approving the city manager's employment agreement. And I will explain. So I don't know if you have this in front of you. I'm pretty sure that most members of the public do not. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. It's 16 pages long, but I will cover the meat and potatoes of it. There's a lot of whereases on the first page, and so I won't read those. On the second page, section 1, paragraph B, this is a 3-year contract, which, if approved, will run from October 3rd, next month, to October 2nd, 2025. The next item I want to point out is section 5, termination, suspension, and severance pay. Under this section, the first paragraph is A, it discusses termination without cause. Under this provision, if the city manager Mr. Bahia is terminated without cause, or if the city decides not to renew the contract when it's up for no particular reason, he is due, eligible for 20 weeks of severance pay, just as Mr. Stevenson was. The next paragraph B, termination for cause, is, city attorney did a lot of work on this paragraph. Well, she did a lot of work on the whole contract, but she did a lot of work on this paragraph in particular. If the city manager is terminated for cause, he's obviously not eligible for any severance pay. But one of the significant strengths, the provisions that was strengthened in this paragraph is the definition of for cause was much more clearly defined in this document. Section 6 below discusses resignation of the city manager. If the city manager resigns his position, he agrees to provide the city with not less than 60 days written notice. That, I believe, is the same as the previous contract. The next section, 7, discusses compensation and annual review. In paragraph A, the agreed-upon salary that we reached was $165,000 per year. Next paragraph discusses, and we had some discussion about this. It calls for a meeting in 6 months with the city manager and each of the council members. And this is in the contract and requires the city manager to schedule these meetings in April at the 6-month mark with each of the council members to discuss performance and progress and expectations to date. Right? And then next 6 months after that is the annual review, which will then occur every year. Section 8 is a retirement plan. City agrees to contribute 15% of the city manager's annual base salary to the retirement plan. That is the same as it was before. It's also consistent with what we do for the city attorney and city clerk. Section 9, automobile allowance, $350 per month. That is down from $500 was the previous contract. While it is not, this benefit is not offered by all cities in Florida, but it is very common. I don't have an exact number, but it is a common benefit. The average right now seems to be $500 or $600 a month. So this is kind of a low $350. We did have some discussion about that, but it's $350 is what we agreed upon. Section 10 discusses benefits, vacation and sick leave. Paragraph B stipulates that the manager will be capped at 450 hours of vacation leave, as are all other employees. The rules that apply to other employees in this category apply to everybody, apply to him too. Section 11 deals with insurance. I do want to discuss paragraph B a little bit. We have a little bit of unfinished business. We need to come back to paragraph B, and particularly the part that addresses short-term disability. It was discovered in this, as we went back and forth on the amount of short-term disability we would be willing to supply or furnish. It was discovered that the city's contract with the insurance carrier caps it already at $950 a month for, not a month, yeah, a month. No, weekly. $950 a week is the maximum benefit for the plan that the city has. So the previous contract we had with the city manager called for $1,350. Well, we didn't have that. We would have, I guess, just had to make up the difference because our policy only calls for $950. Human Resources is currently looking to see what options are available out there. And once we have that information, then we as a group, and city manager and perhaps our other two charter officers may want to have a discussion about there's no point in having it now because we don't even know what we can get. And what we might be willing to pay or not pay at that point. So at this point, we are providing $950, but we agreed to go back and revisit this. Section 13, the city agreed to pay for dues and subscriptions for the Florida League of Cities, the ICCMA and the FCCMA, and the Local Government Hispanic Network, LGHN, of which Mr. Bahia is currently a member. Section 14, professional development. The city agreed to pay up to $5,000 annually, which of course has to be in the budget every year, but up to $5,000 annually to attend meetings and conferences of FLC, ICCMA, right, so forth and so on. Section 15, city manager is required to live within the city, a full-time resident of the city, within 6 months following the commencement of his employment, as per the charter. It's my understanding in conversations with Mr. Bahia that he plans to move here right away, but as far as the contract is concerned, he does have 6 months. And I think that is really it. That's the significant bones of it. Are there council members questions? Well, are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, council member questions? No questions?
No.
Pam and I worked all this and you have no questions?
Well, the explanation is
Yeah, the explanation was wonderful, and the obvious changes were obvious. You could see where they were made. I appreciated those.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of work that went into this, and it was the city attorney, it was the assistant city attorney, Ernie Mueller, put a lot of work into this. Our HR director, Bledsoe, had a lot to do with it. Dr. Spina had a lot to do with it. Colin Benziger had a lot to do with it. I touched it a time or two. But yeah, I think it's a good product. Mr. Bahia,
Was actively.
yeah, oh yeah, he was good. We only met twice. I mean, it wasn't difficult to.
And is there a clause that says that if he resigns, Dr. Spina will come back? Is that in there?
If I may offer,
Put that in there. Somebody write that in there.
if I may offer a motion
Yes.
to approve the city manager's employment agreement as written, as presented, with the provision that we're going to come back potentially and review the short-term disability agreement, if that needs to be in there. But at this point, to move to approve the contract as written.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? None. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The
And an hallelujah.
The beginning date, I think I mentioned, is October 3rd, so I'm sure Mr. Bahia is watching. We're supposed to talk either after this or in the morning. We'll coordinate the signatures on this and formalize it, but we're good to go for October 3rd. Next item is a public hearing and second reading of Ordinance 1534, amending Chapter 2 of the Code, Administration and Elections. I'll open the public hearing. Interim City Manager Dr. Spina will explain.
Thank you. As Troy alluded, this is a ordinance that will change the names of the public works. This will change the organizational names of the public work departments that currently are Public Works Operations and Maintenance and Public Works Utilities. The two departments were created several years ago to make the operations more efficient. In addition, we're asking that the redevelopment department just be folded into the community development department for conciseness and uniformity. So I'm asking council to approve this ordinance that will establish two separate departments to be known as Public Works Department and the Utilities Department, as well as redevelopment be part of community development.
Good. Other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Council members, you have any questions for Dr. Spina?
I do have one, maybe not for Dr. Spina, but for Mr. Ingham. Any problem with historical reporting of the history, the financial history for the individual departments? There'll be no significant changes?
No, the general ledger codes would stay the same.
But I'm talking more about the AFR, the old CAFRs and so forth. Any restatement involved?
I don't think there would be any issue.
Okay, okay.
Because it's just dropping public works, making it, instead of public works utilities, it's utilities.
Okay. Just make sure we don't,
I can ask the.
just make sure we don't create ourselves any heartache on the back end, that's all.
Other questions? If not, I'll ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, dividing the Public Works Department into the Public Works Department and the Utilities Department, merging the Community Development Department and the Redevelopment Department, amending Chapter 2, Administration and Elections, Article 1, General, Section 2-3, Administrative Departments, established appointment of department heads, bond, additional duties, to provide for updating of administrative departments, providing for severability, providing for authority to codify, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I will close the hearing. Ask if the ordinance is acceptable. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 1534, amending Chapter 2 of the Code, Administration and Elections.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Ordinance is adopted on second reading. Next item is first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 22 of the Code by revising Section 22-340 pertaining to collection practices for residential solid waste. Interim City Manager Dr. Spino will explain.
Thank you. Staff is recommending the council approve an ordinance amending Chapter 22 of the Code by revising Section 22-340, collection practices for residential solid waste, on a first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading for September 20th, 2022. In January of 2021, City Council made a transition to a semi-automatic system to collect residential trash. Certain sanitation vehicles were retrofitted with automatic tippers that picked up standard sanitation carts, and the manual practice of crews picking up cans was discontinued. With the implementation of the new automated system, the collection practice changed. In order to reflect the new semi-automatic system, the council adopted Ordinance 1508 on September 7, 2021, revising Chapter 22, Article 6 of our Code of Ordinances, which address solid waste collection. In performing iterations of Article 6 to update it to reflect current collection practices, the section of the code regulating the time frame for solid waste containers to be left at the curb for pickup on collection day had been inadvertently omitted. The ordinance being presented tonight revises Section 22-340 to include language addressing the time frame for solid waste containers to be left at the curb for pickup on collection day. The language states basically that solid waste containers shall not be placed at curbside earlier than sunset the day prior to collection and shall be removed from curbside by sunset the day of collection.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Council member questions? Okay. None, I'll ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending Chapter 22 of the City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Utilities, Article 6, Solid Waste Collection and Disposal by revising Section 22-340 to include language addressing time frame for containers to be left at the curb for pickup on collection day, providing for authority to codify, providing for the repeal of ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ordinance is acceptable. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve on first reading, ordinance amending Chapter 22 of the Code by revising Section 22-340, collection practices for residential solid waste.
Second. Motion and second. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The ordinance is adopted on first reading and will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. Next item is public hearing and second reading of Ordinance 1533, establishing the annual salary of the mayor and members of the city council. Why am I handing the gavel to?
know if you wanted to or not, so I just threw it in there, but you don't have to.
No. Yeah, no, I'm just,
Can't hand it to anybody. Yeah, it's not affected.
okay. I'll open the public hearing and ask interim city manager, what's that? Dr. Spina to explain.
Staff is recommending council consider an adoption of annual salary of mayor and members of city council. Several years ago, mayor and city council salary was listed at $239 a month, with council receiving $50 a month for mileage and the mayor receiving $100 a month for mileage. A survey was done throughout the state, with the median being $8,000 a year salary for council and $10,000 a year salary for mayor. Staff recommends this change.
Good. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Council member, any questions? Closed it. Public hearing, ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, repealing Ordinance 1102, adopted November 4th, 2003, adopting a new ordinance establishing the annual salary of the mayor and members of city council, providing for an automatic salary increase effective October 1 of each year, to reflect the Consumer Price Index CPI rates, establishing expense accounts for the members of city council and the mayor, providing for a manner of payment of salaries and expense accounts, providing for severability, providing for repeal of all conflicting ordinances, providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If the ordinance is acceptable, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve an ordinance establishing the annual salary of the mayor and members of city council upon second reading.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Vice Mayor.
I understand the reasoning for it, but as I stated in the first reading, I disagree with the methodology. We don't guarantee raises for our our employees through year over year. I disagree with the process, and I think that it's the wrong approach and it sends the wrong signal. So I will not support the motion.
In the interest of improvement, what should the process be?
I don't believe that a city council should have an automatic CPI kick to have it be an ordinance. I think at the very least it should be discussed annually during the budget cycle, as we do the rest of our employees of the city. There's no guarantees for anything for the availability of the funding, and the way it's written, it's irrespective of what the revenue sources are. If we have a decrease in the ad valorem taxable values and we end up with less money, we technically would have to abide by the ordinance, guarantee that the city council would get a raise under normal circumstances, the due course of the process. Furthermore, and I know it's too late for this, but I disagree with the city council being able to give itself a raise. I think maybe for the next council, you would be able to do that. Similar to the verbiage that's in the charter for the current mayoral issue. But I just don't think it's appropriate for us to do it ourselves, give ourselves a raise and make an automatic raise year after year.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor. So let me ask, I know this is second reading, but let me ask for this, because this has been a long discussion. We've been talking about this for 2 years.
Right.
First of all, I first agreed with you about we shouldn't be able to raise the salaries during the current term, but I changed my mind on that after we had extensive discussion about, well, now we have a sitting council, no matter when we do it, the 3 of us are making one rate of pay and 2 of us are making the other. We'll never all 5 Well, eventually it'll work out, but it'll take 8 years before we get a council that everybody's making the same amount of money.
I understand that, yeah.
So that kind of swayed me on that, but here's something that I agree with you about here, and I'm wondering if we can have a little, I know it's late, but I agree with you about automatic escalators. I'm not a fan of automatic escalators. We don't do it for the water, we don't do it for sanitation. When, on the pension boards, we don't do it for the administrative fees. I've fought that every time. I don't like automatic escalators because they don't necessarily reflect the local climate. Sometimes we're in worse shape, sometimes we're in better shape. And that number, the national number is affected by everybody in California, New England. Let me ask you, I mean, I know that you have some heartburn over this, but if we struck section 4, which is the part that makes the automatic escalator, how would you feel about this ordinance at that point?
I agree with you on the, nobody ever be in sync. I understand that from a methodology point. I'm really firm about the escalator, the automatic escalator.
I'm proposing that we take it out. I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
I don't know about that either. I don't know what it would do to everything, but the automatic escalator is just, dang, nobody else gets it for anything.
That's the CPI?
Pardon?
That's the CPI language?
Yeah.
'Cause that was in the current one,
That's
but
currently,
We never
But
approved
we
it.
never did it.
we never did it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I have to agree with the vice mayor. We don't do automatic escalators for anything else, and we don't do it for our own employees. We don't tell them you're gonna get a raise 3% over whatever CPI is. We don't,
I have more heartburn over the automatic escalator than I do over the other issue. That's more of a philosophical thing, and I could live with that, okay?
well,
But I don't know that I could, I don't know that I could live with, everybody gets a raise every year, and everybody else sits there, well, we'll see what happens with the revenues.
okay, well, we have a little more discussion here. Councilmember Chambers.
And I agree with that also about removing that, but question, can we do that tonight, or do we have to start the process over?
No, we could do it.
This is an item that's been advertised, and you're not giving yourself more, you're giving yourself less. So you can make that amendment when you make the motion. Somebody can make the amendment when you make the motion.
For a point of clarification, do we have to vote on the original motion, or?
No, it could be amended if the motion maker chooses to, which I'm going for
Okay,
that.
all right, that was my only thing.
All right, Councilmember Abel. You've heard some discussion here. I don't know what you're feeling. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I have to because you made a motion.
I'm ready to be put on the spot, but I think Councilwoman Donahue wanted to say something
All right,
first.
Councilmember Donahue.
Well, my only comment is that it has been this way, and council hasn't had a raise since, what, 2010? So every single council chose not to put the raise in. So,
Well, we didn't choose, we just never
no,
touched
no,
it.
we never we always at budget time did not pick up on this. We chose not to put it in the budget.
Sure, I've been on the council since 2016. I've never once had a discussion about whether council should get a CPI raise. I didn't even know it was in the ordinance.
Like our city clerk just said, it's been in the ordinance. I can live with the change. I absolutely have no problem with that. I just want to point out, I think we also had it built in that we would have a water rate increase, and we chose not to do that too. So each council still has the ability to say, we know we could accept a pay raise this year, and so sometimes that helps that move along. I mean, when was the last time city council had a pay raise? Seriously, anybody know the date? I mean, it's been so long
So you're
ago.
opposed to taking this out?
I'm just pointing out, I mean, it looks like the vote is going to go, and I will go along with the vote, but I'm just pointing out that this gives the sitting council the opportunity to not have all the heartburn. It just says, well, look, we haven't had a pay, we haven't had a pay raise now in 2 or 3 years. It's probably time The ordinance says we can, so this year, we're going to go with what we've been given permission to do, and we'll approve a pay raise. You're still going to have to put it in the budget. Just because it's here doesn't say you will, it says you can, and there's a big difference.
It says shall, it doesn't say can, it says
Well-
shall.
But it did before too, and no one ever gave themselves a pay raise.
Well, we had
So-
bad ordinance before, doesn't mean we had to have a bad one now.
Oh, okay, I hear you.
If I may respond to
Well,
okay.
well, we'll get to round two, but I haven't,
Ready to change your
My turn.
motion? Yes.
Well, I don't want to be too repetitive, but the amount of stuff we had to go through to give ourselves this raise, which isn't really giving ourselves a raise, it's more about the value we put in the position of council and wanting to attract more people here. The amount of work we did to do that, and I mean, this is a big jump too. This is going from $3,400 a year to $8,000 a year for council members. We don't want to be in a position, again, where we have to make such a huge jump to keep up. And the CPI adjustment provision in there is built in to keep us from having to do something like that. That said, I understand what you all are saying about not wanting to have an automatic escalator. But, as I've heard before, when we were actually doing the CPI adjustments year by year, some years council salaries went down because the CPI was negative. So even though CPI is a nationwide thing, I think that it would be a good enough approximation for how to keep our salaries on par with where they ought to be for the position, so we don't get behind again. Now, that said, I understand the sentiment that I've heard about this motion and wanting to remove Article 4, Provision 4. Section 4. So I'll withdraw my motion, and I'll let anyone create a motion. I don't not support that, but I prefer it with it in there. So I'll withdraw my motion.
do we have a new motion?
Yes.
Well, we're gonna have further discussion, but do we have a new motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Um,
Well, Councilmember Chambers,
I just had a comment, so I don't know if it's appropriate now or another.
you wanna wait till he says motion, and I go to you, or you
I'll
want?
just say it now.
Okay.
Maybe instead of CPI, if we're looking at that, would it be more appropriate to have whatever the employees get, we get?
See, my opinion, I can't answer that, I can only answer that for me.
I was just throwing that out.
I hear there's 5 very well-intended people up here, and everybody's got, there's some validity to every point here. I would prefer not to have any form of automatic escalator, and I'll tell you why. Because maybe CPI is outrageous, the economy, we go through a recession, whatever the case may be, things are bleak, right? And we may have to, so at some point, we've had to do it before, look at our employees and say, we feel your pain, but we just don't have any, I mean, we gotta give you bare bones raise, we can't do it. And then suppose the CPI is higher, now, I know it's symbolic, you're talking about $8,000 versus a real salary, but it's still, oh, it's in the ordinance that the council gets a certain percentage, but we only got 2 or 1 or whatever. The reality, council member, I hear what you're saying, and in real terms, you're both right. I get it. I just think it's more palatable. We are making a big jump, and I just think it's more palatable if we do it without any form of.
I have one more question before you make the motion. If you remove that, what are we voting on? If I read it right, it basically says we're repealing 1102 and adopting a new ordinance establishing the annual salary of the mayor and members of city council, and then you scratch everything else. That's it. So what are we voting on? If we take that out.
It's a 2-page ordinance.
Well, tell me what else is in there then, because it sounds like we've just like gutted the whole thing.
There's 8 sections. We're taking 1 sentence out. Section 4, The part that we're, I think, talking about
I'm just
omitting.
looking at the synopsis.
Well, you have to look at the ordinance, and the section that we're contemplating taking out is section 4, and it reads, in addition, the annual salary shall automatically be increased effective October 1 of each year to reflect the consumer price index rates. That's one sentence, section 4, that we're talking about eliminating. So we're not, that doesn't affect the other 8 sections.
You'll still be voting to approve an increase of council salary to $8,000 beginning October 1, and also to increase mayor's salary to $10,000 in accordance with the charter restrictions.
If that passes, yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right. I just had to ask. It seemed like of the piece we're looking at here that she's getting ready to read, it was
Well, that's the
basically,
title. You have to, yeah.
well, but that's what she's going to read, so.
Okay.
My only follow-up comment to that is, we're employees of the city, and we need to be treated as employees of the city, as we ask all of our employees to abide by what we offer in every budget cycle. And if discussion needs to be had, it needs to be had for everybody. I don't believe that, I agree with as I said before, the automatic escalator is just, could be too much. We haven't followed it in the past, I recognize that, but I never heard council ever say, no, we're not going to give ourselves a raise as a formal action. So the question just never came up, it just didn't happen. So we take it out, we don't have to worry about it, and then we address it, future councils can address it as necessary. I think it's provides transparency for us, and we're the leaders. So we need to play by the same rules and the same sandbox, and I think that's important that we do it appropriately.
We've had a lot of discussion when there's no motion on the table. Vice Mayor, are you still prepared to make a motion?
I move to accept on public hearing a second reading the ordinance establishing the annual salary of the mayor and members of city council with the striking of section 4, which annual salary shall automatically be increased effective October 1st of each year to reflect the consumer price increase, CPI index, CPI rates. And I think that's the motion.
Striking it from the title?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking the city attorney
Oh.
if we're striking that, it's from the title as well.
Yes, it would have to come out of the title as well. And I just wanted to make one other suggestion, that a possible rephrasing of section 4 could be, in addition, the annual salary may be increased effective October 1 of each year. That way it isn't automatic. That way it isn't titled to the CPI. It's just something that is in there so that you don't have to go through a major ordinance 5 years from now and saying, we need to increase our salary from 8,000 to 10,000. It's just you could revisit it each year during the budget time.
Do our individual employee contracts, our staff contracts have that in it?
Mine doesn't. I don't know about the rest of
Then I don't think
people.
we should have it.
So,
I still say strike section 4.
Motion on the table is to approve the ordinance striking section.
Section 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Councilmember Abel.
I'll support this, certainly, but I foresee every year, every council is going to have the heartburn of creating, the raise that is, needed in order to keep this position one that attracts people. So I think that this is causing more pain than necessary, but nevertheless, I'm really happy to see council raises coming up to where they ought to be, and hopefully it works out for the mayor as well, for the voters. But that's all I have to say.
Other discussion? Councilmember Donahue.
I will support it, but I will tell you that we did have conversation that said I'm not giving myself a pay raise over and over and over again, almost every year. It was like, don't even bring it up. So at this year, at the goal setting session, I was like, hey, I can't run this year. I'm bringing it up. And everybody laughed about it and said, well, that's right. You don't have to worry about it. That was the mindset every year. Nobody wanted to give themselves a pay raise. So the proof will be in the pudding. Let's see what happens in a year, 2 years. See if people are willing to, if this council is willing to do it. But I will support it because the majority is in that way, and there's no reason for me to not support it. So.
Good. Council members, if the ordinance is acceptable, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Ordinance is adopted on second reading. Thank you, council. Carryover council business. From previous meetings, any carryover council business?
I might have one.
Go ahead.
Originally, this will take 30 seconds. Originally, we were going to try and have the club come make a presentation tonight, but they weren't prepared in time, so they're asking to come in on the 20th of September. So if we could put that process for the next agenda.
Good. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Other carryover council business? If not, new business and board reports. Councilmember Abel.
I gave you some information about the Affordable Housing Commission conference that I went to this past week. It was really good. They had a lot of workshops about various things that are available in terms of implementing the resources for affordable housing, and went to a lot of good workshops. And it was 2 weeks after FLC, and I just got to say, the affordable housing people know how to have a party. FLC is great, but we had a really nice time. So I sent you all some really good resources from the conference, and I hope that you can find some good stuff in there.
Thank you. Other new business? Councilmember Chambers.
It's not new business, but it is a comment, just to echo what I heard earlier. Thank you, staff, on the budget. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, Dr. Spina, City Attorney, for the work with our contract for our city manager. We've done good work, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Other new business, board reports. I have one thing for the Vice Mayor, and not to put you on the spot, but if you can think about this and maybe let us know what you can or can't do or what this. So I'm looking at some of the HART bus stops, and I'm wondering if we can get the benches redesigned so that all the benches have the armrests, like most modern benches have armrests to keep people from camping on the bench. You can sit in them. In fact, they're more comfortable for sitting in because you have an armrest. But you can't, it's harder to camp out. And I've noticed it's along Route 6 primarily on 56th Street, and it seems like the closer you get to 56th and Bush, the worse it gets, and the further south you go. And I'm just wondering if we could get HART to do anything about this. I know some of them are just metal benches and some are concrete. So I don't know if we could some way fabricate a metal, without replacing the whole concrete bench, could we fabricate a metal armrest that could be screwed into the existing bench?
I can address that to some degree.
Okay, good.
HART budget has a little over $1 million in it for bus stop renovations and so forth. And they approached the city 2 weeks ago, or within the last 2 weeks, about replacing some of the bus stops and shelters within this, the 56 and Fowler intersection. There's 4 of them in particular that they want to do, and we kicked back to them to change the design a little bit and, keep what we've got and put different bus stops closer to the area that you're talking about. I think there's like 14,000 bus stops throughout the whole region. But I will go back to them and see what we can do about the individual, where there's just a bench, making it a little less comfortable for sleeping and so forth. But there is a process going on, and I know Brian in engineering has responded back to them. Haven't heard any resolution since then, but I will take it back to the maintenance, to the powers that be and who's appropriating that, working with that. I'll look into it.
All right, thank you. That's all I have. Other new business? City manager's report.
Thank you. I have two items tonight. First, I'd like to just remind you that we're having a historic preservation meeting on Thursday at 6 p.m. at the Lightfoot Center. This is kind of just a public meeting to acquaint the residents with the draft historic preservation ordinance, some of the goals we have in becoming a local certified government, and how that benefits the community. So that'll be at 6 o'clock Thursday at the Lightfoot Center. Yes.
How has that gone out? Were there invitations mailed out, or?
Invitations were mailed out, and it's been posted on the website in different places.
Okay. And did it specifically go to certain types of homes?
It went to people, I think it went to all the homeowners who have a Mediterranean-style home and some of the historic properties, just to kind of get.
So we did not look at the mid-centuries this go around?
Not this go around, no.
Okay.
Although I like those.
Yeah. They're now considered antiques. They're
Yes.
over 50 years old.
So are we.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Mid-century. Also, Carl, do you want to come up, or just, Carl's just going to remind you about the Senior Expo.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Carl Langford, Leisure Services Director. I just want to come up and take a moment to remind staff and the millions, Mayor, last time, of people who are watching YouTube, of the upcoming 33rd Annual City Senior Expo, which will be held on Friday, September 16th, from 9 a.m. till noon at the Omar K. Lightfoot Center at 10901 North 56th Street. We've been doing this for years, and thank you to Care Plus Health Plans for their sponsorship of this event. We will have all sorts of vendors there with information for our local seniors, free skin cancer screenings, hearing, and other health screening opportunities. Presenters from Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance providers, assisted living facilities, legal services, and really anything and everything geared towards our senior population. So please come out Friday, September 16th, between 9 a.m. and noon at the Omar K. Lightfoot Center.
This is not a drive-through this year.
It is not a drive-through. For the past 2 years, this has been a drive-through event due to COVID. We are in person this year.
That was fun.
Thank you, Mr.
Is he directing this
go.
at last any chance? Is he directing this?
Oh, you're a councilwoman. You can't get any of the treats, but you can go.
Ms. Bennett,
I'm done, thank you.
you're done. City attorney? Nothing to report. Council members, any other business to come before the council? Directors, anything? Okay, we'll be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I never say it.